It's undeniable that Three Houses has left a huge impact on the Fire Emblem franchise, bringing in many new fans to the series, and with the very first Fire Emblem game coming to the Switch in a few days, I imagine many people will want to try it. However, the game contains many interesting quirks that are very different from what modern fans of the series have come to expect, and I thought it might be best to prepare beforehand. For the sake of convenience, I'll divide this video into 3 sections: characters, gameplay quirks, and how to prepare for the final boss. With all that being said, let's get into it. So first, let's go over how characters work in this game. In most entries of the series, if there's a low-level unit with poor initial stats, they usually have high growths to compensate. Look at this young lad Violent here compared to God King Mathis. He's level 1, and his stats are worse, so he must be a good trainee unit, right? Well, I'm afraid to tell you that Violent here is god-awful in every department compared to most other Cavaliers you'll get. The reason for this is that the game was made with permadeath in mind, and a lot of units were meant to be replacements for your good units in case they died. So you'll find that a high number of units you get throughout the game aren't so great. A good rule of thumb is that if a character initially appears to be good, they are, and if a character appears to be bad, their growths are probably poor too, besides obvious exceptions like Est. However, don't let that stop you from using who you like, as most enemies in this game are weak, and you'll be able to beat it using any combination of units you like. Having units like Cain and Abel just make it a bit easier. So if you really like this terrible green horseman over this terrible green archer, go nuts. Another change compared to the newer games is that units can't reclass, so if you happen to like a character but don't like their class, you might be a bit disappointed. However, this game does have a remake on the DS that lets you reclass to your heart's content, so if you care deeply about unit customization and training, I recommend you check that out instead. Speaking of classes, some simply can't promote. However, characters that can't promote usually have their own benefits. Take Castor and Daros who you get in Chapter 2 for example. Compared to Gordon, Castor has better base stats and better movement, however he'll never be able to promote to a sniper, which would eventually make Gordon better. So if you only want one bow user on your team, you'll have to pick your short-term benefits over your long-term benefits, which creates an interesting unit balance. You also get Daros this chapter, who's a pirate that can't promote, but he's an infantry unit that can walk on water easily. So while not being able to customize your units or promote some of them might seem like a turnoff for some people, it does create a fascinating balance when choosing who to deploy. So I'd say give the game a chance when it comes out in a few days to experience the interesting unit designs of the first entry in the series. Next up we have some of the game's more interesting quirks gameplay-wise. Right in the first map you'll notice that only Marth can visit villages and only Marth can end the map by seizing thrones. While this may seem annoying at first, Marth is a very good unit in this game and can walk on water, so if you send him off to go get a village by himself, he should be fine most of the time. Another thing Marth has in this game is the Fire Emblem, which he gets in Chapter 6, which allows him to open chests. So if you have door keys to open the doors to the chests, you really don't need to deploy thieves in this game, making Marth a very important unit besides just being the lord of the game. Most people are used to the weapon ranking system where if you use a weapon more, you'll gain weapon EXP and get more powerful with that weapon. But in Fire Emblem 1, the weapon level is a universal stat that can be leveled up like other stats and applies to all weapons. You'll notice that Mathis here has a weapon level of 8 at base, which allows him to use good weapons like the Silver Lance and Rider's Bane at base. However, since Cavs can use lances and swords, and this isn't just his lance rank, he can use a lot of good swords too and is 1 weapon level away from using the Silver Sword. So you really don't need to worry about grinding specific weapon ranks to meet certain thresholds in this game. Next is trading, and this might be the biggest turnoff for some people. Instead of regular trading, units can use the give command once per turn to give an ally their item. And to access the convoy, you need to access a physical convoy on the map, which you can only do one at a time with your units. To make this process less tedious, I recommend you keep all of your characters' inventories clear of junk, and maybe have at least one open slot on a lot of your units in case they need to pick up an item. The game also stops selling axes after Chapter 20, so I recommend you buy a lot in the early game if you want to use the Axe Bros or Daros. Speaking of buying things, you cannot sell items in this game, but the game gives you a lot more money than most Fire Emblem games, so you shouldn't really run into financial problems. There's also no getting around how clunky it is, but keeping yourself organized should help a bit. And if you ever come across an item you don't think you want very much, just dump it. Finally, for gameplay oddities, there are magic users. The first thing you'll notice about healers in Chapter 1 is that they don't gain EXP when you use their staves. Well, you see, the thing is, you can only give healers EXP by putting them in harm's way, which goes against the instincts of many Fire Emblem players. However, you don't really need to give healers experience, as the second healer you get, Lena, has enough weapon level to use staves like Warp at base, and you can train mages with high weapon level growths like Merrick then promote them and they'll be able to use their high weapon level with staves. Or you could use the pre-promoted bishops like Wendell or Boa. So while gaining EXP for healers might seem like a pain at first, gaining EXP on them isn't really needed at all unless you really like Riz, of course. Then you might have a problem. Also, magic users completely rely on the might of their tome to deal damage. Their strength stat doesn't matter. I think that covers most of the game mechanics people might initially be confused about, so with that, let's delve into how to deal with the final boss of Medius, since some players might accidentally softlock themselves if they don't prepare. The easiest way to take him out is with Falchion, but to get Falchion you need to secure the Light Sphere and the Star Sphere on this map here from the thieves before they get away. Then bring those spheres to the village on this map to get the Starlight Tome, and then use that Starlight Tome to defeat Garnet, who has Falchion. However, the Star Sphere allows you to use powerful weapons like Gradivis without running out of uses, so you'll have to decide for yourself if you would rather have that effect than the Falchion. However, without it, it will be hard to defeat Medius since he has very high defense, and Falchion is the only weapon that deals effective damage. There are still ways of damaging him, like using extremely powerful weapons on him with kept units, like Gradivis, Mercurius for Marth, or if you're feeling really risky, the Devil Axe. Keep in mind that he's immune to ranged attacks like bows and magic, so you'll have to get up close and personal. So, a couple chapters before endgame, it might be a good idea to check your inventory to see if you have a good way of actually putting down the beast before you commit to getting Falchion. And with that, I think that's everything somebody needs to know before getting into this very strange Fire Emblem experience. I left out a couple things, but I think there are some surprises not worth spoiling. And if you're excited for Fire Emblem 1, maybe subscribe to the channel since I'll be covering it a lot for the next month. And with that, I will see you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.